Hey everybody, welcome back to Vows and Visuals. Today we're on episode 7. Today we're going to do a little bit of a different kind of style. We're going to just do Reddit stories today, get into it. But I want to start this episode off first by saying I want all of you guys to like and subscribe. We need to get those viewerships up. Everybody, come on now.
Let's do it.
But Will, let's talk about your wedding over this last weekend to start off.
For sure. It was a really kind of last minute wedding booking. She booked us 2 months ago. They weren't planning on having a videographer. But they ended up just kind of going through with it, and she was ranting and raving about how much fun she had and how she's so glad that she actually did it. And we got to work with a really cool photographer, Danielle Lopez.
Oh, cool.
Carson's a huge fan of Henry's Diary, and he commented on her post from the wedding. So
whoa, big deal.
Carson was fangirling hard over that one. But it was at Foster Creek Farm, which is a venue out Dry Creek Road, kind of between Belgrade and Manhattan.
Cool.
So my old stomping grounds. I grew up in Manhattan. So it was a lot of fun. Definitely a cool venue. We'd never shot there before. Overall, just a really cool vibe. The bride and groom, they've only been together for a year. But they were in their mid-30s, and they're like, when you know, and I completely agree with that. So overall, really good experience, and now we have 2 to 3 weeks off to kind of, edit and get caught up on that and kind of de-stress a tad. We haven't had really a weekend off since May.
That's awesome.
We've had one weekend that we still worked practically. So.
Probably feels so good finally this time of the year. Just to have that break is amazing.
It's so nice. And, we're just super thankful to have the business that we have and the work that we do. But we definitely need to, take some time for us too. So that's kind of what we're doing and kind of going from there. So, excited. But our next week weddings are all travel weddings. So
that's fun. That's exciting.
Yeah. So November 4th we'll be in Texas. And then we're back for a little bit, and then we're going to Chicago, and we're going to spend a couple extra days in Chicago and, kind of soak it in. And that's where I went to boot camp. So I want to show Carson where I went to boot camp and practically spent 2 months in prison. So we'll get into that later. But boot camp and prison are the exact same thing. So enough about me. How was your wedding weekend?
That's cool. No, it was great. I was out at Sage Lodge this weekend, which was super, super fun. And it was a fun. I worked with Danielle Mullins, which was super cool. Super fun. It was the first time I worked with her. So it was just an absolute blast doing that. And it was just a great wedding overall. The day, it kind of flew by. They were out of staters. I believe they're from California. They got married at Sage Lodge, and it was just a fun, just overall day. They had a band, a orchestra in a sense, or whatever you call it, with your cello and stuff for the ceremony. Their arch though was beautiful. One of the prettiest arches I've actually seen in a while. It's flowers on the bottom, flowers all the way up in kind of a U shape. It was just beautiful.
Bougie.
Yeah, very bougie. And it was beautiful the way with the mountains of Immigrant Peak in the background. It was super fun. So it was a super fun wedding. I only have 2 weddings the rest of the year, which is super exciting. I have one, I believe, at Camelot and Billings, which is pretty cool. And then I have one up at Big Sky, and then I'm done for the year, and I am so ready. I'm so excited.
Yeah. That's the absolute best feeling. We have 4 left. And
awesome.
They're pretty spaced out. So they give us some time to really, get caught up and kind of go from there.
And breathe.
Yeah. It's such a good feeling, not having the stress of having, some weekends that are planned. So that, another thing is it's a sense of accomplishment where, we're we made it.
Yep.
So
back another year down, ready to go.
Yep.
We survived 40 weddings.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I don't remember my exact number, but no, I'm exactly the same way. It's just I can finally breathe. I can finally be creative again, which is super exciting.
Yeah. And that's another thing is being creative in this position. A lot of people think that us as videographers and photographers that, we kind of have a set system and everything just flows a certain way. But in all reality, every wedding's different. Mm-hmm. And, you have to be creative. But when you're doing that many weddings, it's so hard to be creative. So as Amber said in, a couple episodes back, taking a little bit of a break for you and, being hey, I might be a couple weeks extra on my, deliverables, but it's going to be a whole lot better because, being able to be creative makes it so that your wedding videos are so much better.
So much fun. It gives us to even go, that's one of the things I'm going to be doing here in the next few weeks, just going into my gear, making sure everything's actually good for next season, these last 2 weddings of this year.
Yeah.
And then being able to just dive into settings and learn more about it. Because like we keep saying, you can't stop learning. You got to continue to keep learning, improving, all that stuff throughout.
For sure. Yeah. And the cameras that we use, Lane and I use the same camera, and like I feel like I have it dialed, and then I change one little setting, and it's like, okay, I don't know what that does.
Yeah, right.
So the downtime is nice for editing, but also to kind of like, reinvent the wheel that we already like have invented multiple times,
Right.
and, kind of hit the ground running. So, no, super thankful and super excited for, 2024 season, coming upon us. So.
Right. And I know both of us are just about booked out for 2024 already, which is
Yep.
super exciting. It's just going to hit the ground rolling again next year, but let's roll that intro and we'll jump into those Reddit stories.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Awesome, Carson. So let's jump into those Reddit stories and let's hear what you got for us today.
Yeah, super exciting. So we figured that this episode would be perfect for October because it's spooky season, and some of these wedding stories are definitely spooky for us to listen to. Very scary. So we're gonna get quite a few perspectives from caterers, from photographers, from brides, from bridesmaids. The whole 9 yards.
Love
so
it.
Let's jump into them. So this first one is on a website called eater.com. So it's a catering story.
Okay.
And it says, I was doing a tented wedding upstate, and it got to be about a half an hour past the time that the caterer was supposed to show up. And I was calling and getting absolutely no answer. So I was like, okay, hopefully he's just in traffic. Sure enough, I finally get an answer, and he thinks he's on a completely different day, even though I had so many calls and so many emails with him prior. So I'm asking him, where's the food? What's going to happen? And he's like, we don't have anything prepared. So I'm like, all right, the wedding is starting in half an hour and we have absolutely no food for cocktail hour in an hour. I was training a new assistant that day and I told her this is not usual at all. So please don't think you will ever have to do this again in your life. But you have to go out there, pretend to be me. This is a pretty easy wedding. I have to be back here cooking. I did an emergency order through the half an hour Amazon Fresh and I kind of started doing the menu as best I could. I also seamless ed in some of the food from some local restaurants to try and make up for some of the food. And then the caterer showed up about 4 hours later after I'd already cooked cocktail hour, served it, and then did the soup and the salad course. He came back and he was able to muster up some food for dinner. It was one of those moments where you had to make very split-second decisions and everybody was just staring at each other like, what are we going to do? The caterer was so apologetic and he went to go talk to the couple, and I looked at him and I was like, they have no idea what just happened. Please do not tell them. I told them at the end and they only noticed one menu item that was missing, and that's what they thought he was apologizing for.
Dang.
That's crazy. That's insane. I mean,
Yeah.
hands down, amazing job by the wedding planner. That is just crazy to be able to like kind of pull that out of her ass in a sense, to be able to figure that out. That's crazy. Cause I mean, like I know Kendall, my girlfriend's parents, they're caterers and they spend hours and hours preparing this food and stuff for them to be able to do it. Like, and I wish does it say anything about the menu or anything like that in there? What the dishes were?
Not really. They said it was a pretty low stakes wedding though.
Okay.
So I'd imagine that it wasn't like
Probably
anything
barbecue
super
like every
crazy.
wedding,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
mean, which is pretty easy to do. So luckily, like it wasn't some like plated meal with salads and all this crazy stuff. I mean, for her to be able to do that is super, super impressive.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's just something that, as a wedding vendor, you need to be quick on your feet and you need to like have a plan A, B, and C. With catering, it's kind of tough to have an extra plan because that means you're like have backup of everything.
Right.
But, just as like being a wedding vendor in a whole, as a videographer, we have extra cameras ready.
Yep.
We have, we're not relying on people, but also it's kind of confusing because it sounds like she was like like the venue something.
Probably like a day of coordinator / wedding planner for the venue.
And then she ended up like being the caterer, but then like also, I don't know. It's a little confusing. And, I think when you have full communication with someone like a caterer for months and then they just don't show up, that's definitely a big red flag on the company. And it sounds like they did a really good job, kind of picking up the pieces and putting it back together. But, overall, going back to what we were saying, read those Google reviews.
Yeah.
And it could have been a fluke thing. Everybody has stuff that comes up and, it happens. We're all people. We understand. But definitely, even though it's a low stakes wedding, it's a high stakes deal for your business.
It also speaks volume to like, really knowing when your weddings are. Will and I, like, I know you do too, Landon, we have all of our dates in Honeybook. I also take all of our dates and I put them in a Google Calendar of mine. Just
I think
to make
we all
sure.
do have them in like 3 places.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, because like I think that's one of our worst fears. You know, obviously we have a lot of worst fears as like wedding
Right.
vendors, but I think that is definitely one of the worst because can you imagine like not showing up on the wedding day, being like thinking it was the weekend after
Oh
or
my gosh, yeah.
something like that. Like that would just be horrible. And, you know,
Yeah.
luckily the wedding planner was, you know, really great and like quick to jump to action in this time. But I mean, you know, imagine if it was the videographer. Unless your photographer knows what they're doing, they can't really like cover that up.
Well, especially with gear. I mean, a lot of photographers don't even have like, I mean, you could, yes, get away with making a wedding video with just one camera handheld and like raising your aperture. But if you want that shallow depth of field, you have to have the ND filter. And most photographers, at least wedding photographers, don't have an ND filter because it is kind of a niche videography only
And
thing.
just crank the shutter.
Absolutely not. Nope. This is Will's last episode, everybody. It's just going to be me and Carson from here on out.
This girl also needs a pay raise, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And I mean, props to her for being able to, on the wedding day of, to not let that couple know. That is so, so important. Because if she would have let that bride and groom know, it would have been World War III.
Yeah,
Like,
it just adds so much more stress on the you know, the bride and the groom and stuff too. And that's exactly the point I was coming across with, you know, being quick on your feet is like in life too, we have so many things that are like unpredictable, but like a great mentality to have is like always try to predict the unpredictable.
Yep.
Just because, you know, stuff can happen, it will happen. And being able to be prepared is so key.
Very.
You know, and there's so many rabbit holes we could go down into because, like, you know, the bride and the groom like paid for this service to happen and it didn't happen. So, you know, it's just rough. But
I mean, that's kind of was my thought process too. So I was wondering, like, how does that work for the wedding coordinator? Like, yes, I understand that's kind of her job to make sure things run smoothly. But I mean, in a way, that caterer should be compensating that wedding planner because she's back there slaving, had to go to all these other restaurants, pay with probably her own money, business money, but
yeah, and then
which is crazy.
if I was that vendor, which I never will be, but if I was that vendor, I would refund plus, you know, like something on top of
Absolutely. Like, hey, I will do anything for you, like family pictures for life or, you know,
that. Yeah, no, for sure.
something crazy like that. I mean, I've had some stories, even like I've had some couples ask me that have been like, what do you do if you can't make it? And I know we have backups. Like we have the opportunity as a videographer. Like if we were on our deathbed, we are able to outsource that. Like catering's not something you can really do because like I said, you have to get food, especially if it's very specific types of food. And
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And like just our business, you know, I've always worked with like, you know, a bunch of different second shooters that I'll try and like source from different places. And that way they like kind of learn our style. Like Matt, he's learned our style like 100%. And I could trust him to go out and get the shots, you know, to make it work. And then, you know, we would still edit it so it would look pretty much identical.
exactly. And that's like we were saying with
yeah.
our associate like business that we're going to do running through Vows and Visuals.
Yep.
Is that's another great way is like if you are a photographer or a videographer, make sure you have a community in some way. And I know we're going to have our own business community to be able to pull from for like, we are on our deathbed. We don't know what to do. Basically, like
Yeah.
we need you to come up this day and shoot this wedding.
Yep.
Because the style will be about the
So,
same.
you know, long story short, have a plan A through Z.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Whole
exactly.
alphabet. Okay. This next one says, my aunt's wedding, one of her bridesmaids was a former party girl who couldn't stop herself from having a good time when any opportunity came up, which meant not keeping an eye on her child. In general, she let this kid do anything. He was about 9 and like the epitome of a spoiled only child mommy's boy. He even had a tantrum in the middle of the ceremony because she wasn't paying attention to him, but that's not where it went bad. During the reception, he ran around shoveling in food and somehow got his hands on beer. Everyone was having fun, so no one noticed until he threw up on the dance floor. Like projectile vomited. My uncle was quick and shielded my aunt from any splashback. I was around 8 at the time and couldn't believe his behavior, let alone his mom's behavior for letting him run wild. That's the wedding that made me decide that if and when I get married, it'll be a child-free wedding.
Yep. I mean, that kid's going to fraternity straight into college. We already know based
yeah.
off of that. But
you know, side note too, Carson and I always talk about this because, you know, all these people spend a lot of money on weddings and we all love kids. You know, Carson is like, anytime there's a baby around, she is like ecstatic. But if you're going to have a wedding that you're going to, you know, spend a lot of money on, I would highly recommend making it like a kids free wedding or hiring, like, I'm sure some venues have kind of like an exterior like house, you know, even like the place you got ready in just for the ceremony and like, you know, definitely gauge it out, but have it kid free and like possibly hire
or some other things that I've seen
babysitter.
that, yeah, exactly. And exactly like the babysitter. I know a lot of couples will hire babysitters that will watch all of your friends and family's kids that day so that they can just let loose, because it does, like, I understand having your kids is super important and I know you want to be around them, but most kids honestly too don't want to be at a wedding. It's very boring for them. There's not a whole lot for them to do. So, and it just allows the parents to like let loose, which is really fun. Then they can enjoy the night. Everybody can be out there partying, dancing instead of worrying about kids. Or what I've seen people do is they'll have them come for just the ceremony. Yeah. Which is another great thing. Like, perfect. They can still kind of be part of this wedding. But then when that like party starts happening, the drinking starts happening at most of these weddings, like, it's just a great way to be able to just let everybody can let loose, have it so much like stress free. Cause like we keep saying, like, weddings do not have to be stressful. There's no reason. I mean, like our last story we just talked about, like, so many things happen behind the scenes that couples would lose their minds over just about. They'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Oh yeah. And we allow that to happen and like make the day run so much smoother. But
yeah. And you know, just like Landon said, with like a stress-free day, there's always stuff. I don't care what wedding we go to. There's always something that is challenging. You know, like the last wedding I was at, I forgot a cord. And luckily the DJ had it, you know, and like the bride and the groom, they didn't hear about that. Was I a little stressed in the moment? Yeah. Cause I usually have like 40 extras, but you know, just for some reason I didn't have it. And it wasn't that important of a cord. It was just like, you know, a little 3.5 millimeter jack deal. You know, so we were able to like overcome it and everything, but you know, there's just so many moving parts, and, you know, being able to have a backup plan so that the bride and the groom aren't stressed. And I just feel like, you know, kids are a great thing. Don't get me wrong. But at a wedding, it's like, you know, we'll be editing like a ceremony and there's kids crying from multiple angles. We just can't pull that out. And I mean, you probably could, but it's just a pain. And
I mean, we're not Hollywood over here.
Yeah. So, you know, and that's not going to say that like we don't want kids at weddings we're at, because we totally do. We love kids and they're great on camera. I can't tell you how many kids have face planted in front of us and we videoed it. No, I'm kidding. It has happened once. Though. You know, but, you know, just gauge it out and see, like, you know, if you have a bunch of partiers that are coming to your wedding, definitely not good to have kids. But, you know, if you're like mid 40s or something and everybody's got, you know, like 10, 15-year-old kids, like, yeah, that's fine.
No, it's just, I mean, a lot of it comes down to the point of too is like, these kids have to understand that they do have to kind of behave during that day, because if they do, it can hinder the couple. I've seen a lot during speeches where speeches will stop in the middle of it because kids will be running in front, grabbing it. Like even my wedding last weekend, like the kids there were all great, but during the speeches, like the little girl kept running to the mom and then would like hit her and then run away and then back and forth. And it was just kind of like, it's like, okay, like, I mean, I guess that's part of your wedding day, but you could kind of tell the couple was kind of like looking around like, okay, someone grabbed this kid. And I mean, especially if they don't have kids at the time too, like it's your friends. You're like, okay, kind of. So like I said, I recommend just doing a child-free wedding because it does take so much stress off of everybody throughout the day. But I want to jump back a little bit, how you're talking about how you kind of forgot a cord. I have a little caveat story I want to say real quick. There was a wedding this year where, this is a bad story. So I did a wedding and I told myself for months, okay, it's a photo video combo. It's a photo video combo. I get the day before the wedding, I was like, oh, it's just a photography wedding. And I completely forgot just about everything. But I was like, last minute, I'm like, you know what? Because I was like, I don't need my lights. I don't need to bring all this heavy equipment, because it was like a 3-4 hour drive from Billings at the time where I was. So I put like the bare minimum. I was like, you know what? I'll just bring my Sony for video just in case I want to take some cool clips, and bring my gimbal, just throw it all in there. Yeah. I get there and it hit me. There was no service and I had one bar and I was like, oh my God, I think it's a photo video combo. So I had to basically pull it out of my ass and be like, okay, crap, and it was luckily it was just when I was starting details, it just hit me. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot all this stuff. And we were able to like overcome it and make it work. And it still is a beautiful film. The couple had absolutely no idea, which was the best part. But I was freaking out. Like I said, like I didn't have all the correct microphones. And luckily, like I said, I put the like backups in there because I just wanted to make sure just in case anything ever happens. And I didn't have all my light stands and lights and stuff. And like I said, we were able to make something beautiful out of it. But it's just one of those things, like always prepare for the worst, because even I know Amber was talking about, she did a wedding where the videographer just didn't show up on the day of at all, just completely ghosted him, didn't say anything. And I don't know if he got the dates wrong or whatever, but her second shooter also did video at the time. So she was able to have them shoot video, and the couple was super stoked and still got a video out of it because Amber doesn't know anything about video. So
Yeah, no, this is definitely spooky, Cars.
I think it's more scary for us than anybody else, but
No, and like kind of as Landon was saying, he didn't bring lights, didn't do all this stuff, and I think that just kind of like solidifies my opinion on wedding filmmaking is like wedding filmmaking is not a production in my eyes. Like we don't, yes, it helps to set up lights. Yes, it helps to have all of this extra stuff, but we can make it work without that because in a sense, our main job is to capture the day as is, and I always tell our clients, I'm like, I'm in the background most of the day. I don't like the photographer. I will let them kind of run the day, do their thing, whatever. Video, it's like a candid. We want them to just like experience their day and, kind of just go from there. So, I think as a videographer, we can definitely succeed with minimal gear. I know a lot of, videographers here in Montana and like all over the place that literally show up with like one of those little tiny panel lights and like an A7S III and a tripod.
Yeah.
And they produce like some of the coolest videos I've ever seen.
Exactly. I mean,
Stanton Giles, he does not use second shooters. He shoots $10,000 to $15,000 video weddings and by himself. He shot at Sage Lodge by himself. Amazing video.
That's awesome.
So,
I mean, and it goes to show too, like, I mean, yes, a lot of this gear that we do have does make our job so much easier, but you can get away with one camera, just like you were saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, and I trust me, I'm not saying that like we need to simplify everything.
Yep.
But we definitely have tools that make our job easier to make our stuff look better. So, but you definitely can make things work.
Agreed.
On a minimum level. So,
yeah. Awesome. Carson, what's that third story you got for us today?
Okay, so this one is from a DJ.
Ooh.
The parents of the bride were divorced, and the father was at the wedding with his significantly younger girlfriend. It was obvious that no one there really approved of her. During the reception, people were giving toast to the new couple. The father then begins to give his toast, at which time he gets on one knee and proposes to his girlfriend in front of everyone, with mic in hand, at his daughter's wedding. All of this was to the shock and awe of all the attendees. It was dead quiet in the room, except for the ecstatic new fiance.
that is crazy. I've actually, and I've heard multiple times that, people should not propose at weddings. We've had a wedding where people proposed, and the way it was presented was like they asked the bride and the groom, they knew it was going to happen. And like, it was awesome. It worked out really good. But speaking of that, I need to send them that clip. Yeah, thanks. But like it's really stealing like the thunder of the couple's day, and it just seems like, kind of like a pick me kind of thing. So
I mean, as long as the couple is aware and knows about it and they are okay with it, then I think that's something that's totally okay to do. But if that couple has no clue, especially like in the story, I mean, it's so unacceptable. So I had a wedding out at Fox Fields in Red Lodge, and this couple came up to me and you could tell they've been dating for a while. They're very comfortable with each other, but they came up to me and he's like, "Oh my God, you have a Super 8 camera," which I shoot on a lot of weddings. He's like, "Can you take a video of us?" And the way he said it and the way he set it up and where he did it, I thought he was going to propose. I was super hesitant. And basically I told myself, and luckily it was away from everybody kind of at the time. And I still thought it was because I've been on Reddit way too much and down the rabbit holes. So I thought he was going to propose, and I did shoot it. But I also said, if he's going to propose, I'm stopping in that second and I'm just walking away, because as important it is for your guests to be like, feel comfortable and stuff. You don't want to be that photographer, like, because the couple paid for it. You don't want to be like taking away from the value of the couple's wedding, especially if they don't know about it. And like I said, it was a super like awkward situation. Like I was completely like ready to shoot this Super 8 camera. I started rolling, and luckily they just like kissed each other, and I was like, thank God, because I was terrified. I was like, if they're gonna start proposing, I am just stopping, walking away, and being like, this is unacceptable, guys. Can't do this. Because even if you do propose away from everybody, even the day, like she's gonna want to be showing off that ring to all the other friends and family there. And like I said, it does take away, because I have seen stuff like that, and it's completely unacceptable across the board.
Yeah, for
for
sure.
that. So, I mean, like I said, if you're going to propose, make sure that couple is aware in that sense, so that there is no stress and that the couple's okay with it. Because a lot of brides and grooms want that day just to be about them, because they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a wedding for them, not this person getting engaged. And engagements are exciting, but we don't want that to be taken away from there at all.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is shorter, but definitely pretty crazy.
The doozy, okay.
Friend is a photographer, does weddings. Got punched in the face by the groom because the groom decided that the photographer was taking too many photos of the bride.
Landon's got a good one for this.
That's the story. She just got punched.
That's the story. It's like straight to the point. But apparently, yeah, she got punched by the bride or he.
Or by the
I don't
groom,
know. Or by
The groom, yeah.
You know what I mean? She got punched or he got punched by the groom, and because he was taking too many photos or whatever. I don't. Is that not your job?
I mean, you're right. Like, I'm just flabbergasted by it. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, in that situation, I mean, kind of my story, like I know we talked about it on the Patreon. We're still trying to get that set up. Been a little busy lately, but we talked about it on there where a groom threatened to basically like, pardon my French, but like, he's like, I'm going to you like,
Yeah.
and it was just ridiculous. So, and in that situation, I was associate shooting at the time for another photographer. And I was in such a like rock and a hard place because I didn't know what to do in that situation because I was like, my second shooter, me, none of us are going to get hurt at a wedding over a groom being like dumb because he was also over the photos. And there were some other factors, like a little bit of that nose candy and a little bit of alcohol involved there. But it was an unacceptable just situation. And I mean, to actually get punched in the face is even more ridiculous. I mean, at that point, I'd be like that one photographer, just delete and walk away because that's...
No, and like we have like a 3-strike policy on our contract that if like something like that happens,
That's 2 more strikes than I got. I mean, it's especially being like punched or threatened like that. Like
I was going
one
to say,
time,
if someone punches one of us, we're leaving.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no three. There's
I'm
no
outta
3
there.
strikes for that.
Yeah.
That is 3 strikes.
If they punch Carson, I'm going full.
oh, it's game over.
Ain't
No,
shit.
it's absolutely, it's just ridiculous. I mean, and I get it. Like a friend, like I'm shooting 2 of my friends' weddings next year and it's going to be like a blast. And I know we're going to have a great time and I know none of us are going to punch. But if that situation did come up, I would be like, I'm sorry, but I'm gone. Like there's no other reason or excuse to be able to do that. I can't believe that he just punched him in the face. That is ridiculous. Like we were just saying, like that's just acceptable. It's in our contracts. Like that's nothing that should happen ever.
Yeah. No, and it straight blows my mind. I've was doing like just video only weddings. I've definitely seen photographers that take way too dang long.
Yeah.
But like all it takes is like, hey, let's speed this up. Like we can kind of, just do like one quick photo of each group and then we're done. If it gets to that point, but just like straight up going out there and punching, that's just way too far.
No. And I mean, even like we were saying too, like this guy almost sounded more hobbyist photographer than professional wedding photographer.
Yeah.
Because we are really good at reading our couples. And when you can kind of tell, like just in their faces, they're kind of like, okay, we're ready to go without them saying it. So you notice it, you're like, okay, perfect, we're done. You go get those shots later.
Yeah.
Or you inform the couple, hey, we have like 5 photos left we have to do of the family or whatever else is left.
Yep.
Or if it's couples, just be like, we'll do it later at sunset because it sounded like it was earlier in the day. So
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach that. So
yeah. So Carson, what you got for us next?
Okay. This one is from Reddit. I don't think there's any comments, but this is definitely very interesting. It is also from a photographer, videographer standpoint. So there's 3 parts to this story. So pretty much everything went wrong at this wedding.
Okay.
But here we go. Moments before the bride walked down the aisle, the groom told his best man, dude, you got to get me out of here. Videographer heard him via groom's mic. Second part. Homeless guy walked up to the side of the park trolley, asked for a cigarette. A groomsman gave him a beer. Homeless guy was very happy. Bride walks over, says to the homeless guy, why don't you get a effing job? I don't care if it's your wedding day. I'll smack you right now. Bride motions. That was from the homeless guy. I assume. Bride motions with her hands. Come on, do it. Let's go. Bride starts walking to the front of the trolley. 3 groomsmen stand up quick, get off the trolley to confront the homeless guy. Everyone is pushing their chest out. Trolley driver gets off, tries to defuse situation. Homeless guy takes swing at trolley driver. Trolley driver clocks homeless guy in the side of the head. Groom and more groomsmen arrive from getting cases of beer and identify themselves as cops. 6 of the 8 groomsmen were cops, including groom. Homeless guy excited by the challenge. Tourists have... This just continues. Tourists have video camera pointed on everyone, but situation dies down. We drive away and homeless guy throws the beer, hits side of trolley, and sprays everywhere. Third part. At reception, introductions are held up. Bride and a bridesmaid got into a verbal fight and bridesmaid took off. Bride found out bridesmaid was doing coke before the ceremony. Oh my God. First of all, that was really hard to read. This person can't type. But second of all, that's a lot.
That's crazy. I mean, first off, the groom, I mean, one thing as a videographer that I have to say I absolutely love is being able to listen to what the bride and groom say behind the scenes because a lot of them forget they have microphones on. I've heard some pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Haven't heard anything that wild, but there was a wedding. One of the first weddings that I met Amber, I was doing second shooting for photography, but the groom, we found out after the fact, was sleeping with a bridesmaid. And the bridesmaid didn't even leave. So the night after the wedding, me and Amber are already gone at this point. The bride and groom have their own suite. This was up in Whitefish at their hotel room. The bridesmaid cried all night on the floor of the bride and groom's room. And spent the night with the bride and groom, basically just crying on the floor of them trying to console. Then it came out a few months later that they were sleeping together and he was been cheating on her like before their relationship even started. Like it crazy, like
Dude.
years and years of cheating. And luckily they're divorced now, at least for her sake. So it's just,
Sounds like I'm going to go back to this story a tad, but it's like how I was saying the 3-strike policy.
yeah.
This wedding day had a 3-strike policy, and I think, all the odds are against them. So I'd be curious to see where they're at now. But, there's just so many different moving parts, and like as a videographer, every time I mic someone, I'm always like, it's only recording when the ceremony's going, because I have this story that I heard where the groom was mic'd up and then the bride and groom disappeared after the ceremony and he still had it internally recording, and you can guess what they went
We can
and
fill in the
did.
blanks there. Yeah.
And so, and the person like posted on a Facebook group, like asking, do I delete this? Do I send them the audio? I'm like, dude, why would you even think that?
That's a dumb question to even, yeah.
And just my mentality is like, I don't want to invade on privacy. The only time that I'm listening to audio is like when I truly need it, like during the ceremony.
Exactly.
Stuff definitely does slip, like I'll put my stuff on for a mic check and like somebody will say a comment, but it's like one of those things, like I'm not gonna like sit here and like judge someone because of what they're saying. Like I've said some stupid shit in my life.
Yeah.
So, and so on. So like I wouldn't be too concerned, but that's insane that like he had cold feet before it and then just like went through. It makes you wonder how many of these grooms actually do that, because there's just so much going on.
I mean, it's a stressful day, and I get that, and I know emotions are already high being a wedding day, but
yeah.
And I mean, like I said, hopefully they are still together for their sake and they're all happy and nothing's going wrong. But that's just ridiculous. And like we were saying with the microphones too, like those times where I have heard people say things, a lot of it's been the first look.
Yeah.
They'll forget it's on there. And I mean, like I had a couple, they were like standing in front of us clearly, so nothing super inappropriate, but he was whispering some pretty funny things to her in her ear.
And that's normal.
And then she realized and was like, you still have a mic on. And then he's like, sorry, Landon, gonna have to edit that out later.
Should have put
Which
that
is
in the
pretty
video.
funny. Yeah, right.
Sorry, Landon.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty funny.
Do you guys have anything to say about the other two parts of that story?
Yeah, no, I was going to get there here in a second, but I think that's crazy with the homeless man. I mean, first off, they were clearly like instigating this whole situation with the homeless man there.
100%.
Like they should have probably just left it alone, ignored it. I mean,
it's just crazy too, because like, yeah, they instigated it a tad, but like when you're on your wedding day and like you're hammered or whatever, like, you don't see like what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems like the bride just came in like guns a-blazing, like ready to light shit up. And, and then it just kind of like caused an issue because like the groomsmen were so open to it, like whoever handed him the beer, and then she came in completely different mentality. And so he's like, dude, what the hell? And, like freaked out and everything. So, I'm not defending him. Not like that whole situation should not have happened.
Agreed.
But another thing is like, like I said, be careful on your wedding day. Don't add more stress than there already is. And, that was just one of those things where that could have easily been avoided.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah, the bride seems like kind of an instigator. I mean, then she fought with her bridesmaids after the fact. I mean, for right reason, but
yeah,
it sounds like the bride is a little bit of a redhead, a hothead like me.
Right, exactly. Freaking redheads.
I'm just kidding.
redheads, man.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is I just saw some pics from someone I knew who got married. They are by far the worst pictures ever. He kept cutting people's heads off. He had pics with sun glare, bad sun glare, nothing artsy. The lighting, horrible. Everyone was so disappointed. And he wasn't doing anything artsy with the heads being cut off. They would be cut off at an angle or something. People at the wedding took much better pictures. They looked like they were taken from a cheap disposable camera and were nothing more than really crappy snapshots. Nothing at all professional. He was horrible. Glad I didn't pay the $800 for that dude.
There's your first issue.
Yeah, there's your first red flag is the $800.
Dude, and that just reminds me, I just did a consultation call, and they're like, oh yeah, we have a family friend that does video, and like he offered to do it for really cheap, so like we'll keep you posted. We're gonna talk to him. He like shoots video for hunting, and you know, weddings are so specialized.
Very.
Like I could be like a nature photographer and like be published, do all this stuff, but then going into weddings, it's a completely different beast, you know? And obviously, like if you have a background in photo, you know not to cut limbs off.
Yeah, right.
Because it looks weird. You know, but there's $800 first red flag. Second red flag is like, you know,
it's ridiculous. And I mean, like you were saying, I mean, especially hiring that family friend as a videographer, like you were just saying, they could be impeding on the day. What you're paying for is not just a beautiful video, not just our high quality gear. You're paying for our experience and understanding of weddings. Because if you hire that friend videographer, they could be standing in the ceremony, they could be missing a shot. Like that's why we always recommend second shooting. And I know Carson didn't do it, but she's very like smart in a sense. So she kind of understood what to do at weddings. So second shooting is so important, especially as a videographer, because we get such a bad name from photographers ruining just like shots across the day, impeding, like back to that story where we had that one church videographer who redid their first look 4 times. And I was like, what if me and Amber stood back there because we were shooting together. And we just like sat back there kind of like leaning against the wall being like, what in the hell is going on right now?
Yeah.
And like, maybe their video was beautiful. We never saw it. But at the same time, we were like, dude, like, come on, we got other things to do, more important things. Like, you don't need to be doing this. Like, the reactions aren't going to be the same. And you don't want that videographer standing in your shots as a photographer too, in the middle of the aisle. Yeah. Like, you have to really work around and stuff. So, I mean, you can have a friend who is a photographer or videographer do your stuff, and they could still create beautiful stuff. But back to Google reviews, back to vetting them, you really want to make sure these vendors are actually like professionals.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a case like that, if these photos are that bad, look at their portfolio. And in a sense like that, even requesting a refund, I would. And I'm not huge on giving like refunds or like requesting refunds as a couple towards that. But if his portfolio looks beautiful and then you get these photos back and you're like, this looks absolutely nothing like what I've ever seen before, like that is completely unacceptable.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with that. And kind of like just to piggyback on what Landon was saying, you know, hiring somebody that does have experience but not in the industry that you're in is actually really detrimental, because, you know, us and what you see, like when you book us, the day is like 20 to 30% of like the overall, you know, package and all of that stuff. Like not only do we know like how to like capture a wedding to its best extent, we know how to run a wedding. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times, even as a videographer, like how many times I've, you know, had to run over and grab a groom or like, you know, schedule stuff because the timeline's wrong, you know, like not only are we're filming, but we're like, you know, me and Carson always say that we're like, you know, you're second wheels or third wheels.
Exactly. Your third wheels. You basically become a day of coordinator too, in a sense.
No, 100%. You know, so that experience on top of us knowing how to use a camera is why we charge what we charge.
Exactly. And I've worked with people who are just nature photographers. I've worked with them, and I've only honestly had one who's that like family friend who was great. Yeah. Basically, because.
Oh, you remember that wedding we did, by the way? Oh, we got a family friend, and he had that like off-camera flash, and like
he was a family friend.
Yeah, and he's like on a ladder like 20 feet in the air during the ceremony. Like,
I mean, the dude was, no offense to how old he was, but the dude was like a dinosaur, and the way he did things were just so ridiculous. I mean, they literally use my photos that I took for them during their portraits because he left early during sunset because he just like left out of nowhere and nobody kind of knew. They use my photo as the like. Whatever you call the Instagram profile screen, which is hilarious.
Yeah, and Landon like was second shooting video for me.
Yeah, and I was like, I can take some photos for you guys, and they were stoked. And
they were like went into their cake cutting, and I was like, oh, let's wait for your photographer, and they're like, oh no, he went home. I'm like, Landon, do you have your photo camera? And Landon's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, we're not paid for this, but let's just do it.
Exactly.
And we did the whole like, you know, the sunset session and blue hour like. And they were like in awe because, you know, and I don't want to call the guy out because, you know, he's probably great in like his own industry. But, you know, he said he had like a journalist background. And
I
you
mean,
know,
we saw the photos he did up on that hill.
yeah, and they
there.
were like a straight ghost.
It was bad. Like, I mean, their skin
Yeah.
tones were completely off. Like like I said, he had his wife or girlfriend with like a full C stand walking around, like using this flash for every shot. And there is a time and a place to do that. But the way he was doing it was just so weird. Like I said, it's
It
like,
was just way overkill for quality that can easily be obtained without that.
I
So-
feel like,
Exactly.
I feel like that goes into our conversation of like weddings should not be a production either, because that is
Exactly.
totally a production. Like, it's your wedding day, just like chill out, you know, especially for like a family friend. Like, why are you doing all this?
well, the ladder during the ceremony, me and Will, like we kept looking over at each other and just dying laughing because it was like and it wasn't like some small little step stool ladder. It was a full size, bright orange, like 16-foot ladder. It was ridiculous, like A-frame ladder. He's up in the top, like, and it's like,
yeah, and then during the ceremony, he was like behind the altar like 5 times.
and he just stood there sometimes and was like looking. It was ridiculous.
Hire somebody that's in the right industry. For that reason, it might be more expensive. But looking back on it, $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, whatever it is, that's easy to make back. You know, most people like, yeah, in the moment, like hiring somebody for photo video for $6,500 to $7,000, like, yeah, that can be a lot. But like looking back on it in 5 years, when you look back at your stuff, you're not gonna know you spent that. You're gonna be
No,
like,
I mean, look at the TikTok trend that was going around. I mean, you look at your photos every single day. If you calculate how many times you look at your photos or use your photos throughout your entire lifetime, because it's the one moment you're going to have of this moment, and you calculate it out, it's like less than a penny a day.
Yep.
Like, it's ridiculous over your lifetime. So basically, it's free is what we tell people.
Yep.
I think I saw that TikTok too.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is also a wedding photographer. And then I think after this story, I'm going to jump into, there's a Facebook group called
Perfect.
PNW Displease Brides.
I might know a photographer who had her wedding and may have posted on there because her
Oh.
photographer was terrible
Oh,
of her
gosh.
glacier elopement, and all of her photos didn't match her
Oh.
editing style.
I think I know which one you're talking about. That's
Yep.
the one I was going to show you guys.
and yep, I know her personally. So let's get into that story.
Well, I'm going to read this one first and then
Okay.
we'll jump into that. But I thought that would be a cool addition for
Yeah.
this too. Okay. My cousin's wedding was a few years ago. It was another situation where they were getting, and I wanted to read this story because you mentioned a church.
Okay.
So this is a church story. It was another situation where they were getting married in a church that does not normally allow photography. After some negotiation, the minister agreed to allow the photographer as long as he was no closer than 5 pews back and did not step into the aisle or try to go up towards the altar. Well,
Side note, real quick, I want to say this sounds like a Catholic wedding because that's
Yep.
how a lot of Catholic churches
Yep.
are.
Yep.
Well, as the bridesmaids started coming down the aisle, he goes out in the aisle, crouched down up towards the second pew. As if this wasn't bad enough, the minister comes rushing down from the altar and confronts him. They actually got into a fight while the processional was happening, and the minister physically grabbed the photographer by the collar and told him to get out. The whole thing was just crazy. The photographer was definitely in the wrong, but seriously, grabbing him by the collar and getting into a fight with him mid-processional, was that the best way to preserve the sanity of the ceremony?
I want to start off by saying if that priest really wants to do that, and he is a priest, we'll let him meet God really quick if that's going to happen. But no, that is absolutely unacceptable.
We're gonna have a coming to Jesus moment.
Yep. And no,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, first off, like, I understand that there is like, that's a sacred place. It is a church. But at the same time, like, that priest has to understand it's a wedding. Like, I just did a Catholic wedding about 2-3 weeks ago, and the priest was great. Like, he came to us and said, "Hey, would you guys just not pass like these number of pews?" And it wasn't like 5 to 10 rows back. Like this story was. He's like, "Just don't go past this first one," is all we ask.
Yeah.
I had 2 tripods even, and which was crazy that they even allowed me to do that. Like, I had 2 tripods in the aisles or on the left and right side of the pews. And then me and Amber were in the middle. I was doing video and she was photo, and it was totally okay. And the guy was great. He even let us come after the ceremony to take pictures up on the, whatever it's called up there, like the stage, which is like a place that's kind of a big no-no normally. So it was really great. And the guy was very understanding and did weddings, which was really great. But I mean, like, this is unacceptable to be able to do. And I've heard so many horror stories of Catholic churches like this. So, I mean, if you are going to do a Catholic church, make sure that you talk with that priest and everybody is on that same page. Even if you need to put a piece of gaff tape on the ground and be like, "Don't go past this piece of gaff tape." Perfect. That's great. and then letting your couple know you're not going to get the photos that you see on our website and see in our portfolio, because a lot of, especially like our Catholic ceremony, they sit in chairs and they face away from the crowd.
Yep.
And it wasn't a full like hour-long Catholic ceremony. It was just a short little 30, 45-minute one. And like I said, the priest was so great about it.
We had kind of the same experience with like, we had a Catholic wedding September. So like a month and a half ago. And I just want to like say the communication is key. I don't care like what religion they are, if they're not religious, whatever. I always try to talk to the officiant and let them know kind of what our plan is, because, you know, like even in this podcast, like if Carson's in the back, like laughing at something or something like that, and I'm trying to talk, I'm like constantly distracted. So I can only imagine like being an officiant, you're already nervous as heck. You know, you're constantly looking over, you're like, oh, and then you lose your train of thought. And like, it can just be a mess. So communication's key. And, you know, like when we did our Catholic wedding, I like went up and, you know, I'd always heard the stigma about Catholic priests and all this stuff. So I went up and I was like, hey, my name's Will. I'm with Elevate Media and these are my plans. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay with you. I also have a mic, like, cause I couldn't tap into their sound system, you know, like there's only so much you can do at those kind of weddings. And, you know, so luckily he let me kind of, you know, I mic'd the groom and then I put a little DJI mic on his little pedestal thing.
That's cool.
And
we weren't even able to meet the priest before this ceremony at this Catholic one. He just kind of came out of his little room. It was kind of funny.
We
that's neat.
Kind of the same boat, but I was able to catch him. He came out to like set something up and I just like ran over there real quick. It was funny though, because I have like the Polar Pro SD card case and it looks like a flask. And so I'm like trying to talk to him. I'm like mid, you know, conversation. I just like whip out this like flask and I'm like spinning the top off and he's like, dude. So, you know, that was pretty funny. I always laugh about that when I pull that thing out. But, you know, long story short, communication and whatever you do communicate and come up with, follow through with it.
Agreed.
If they communicated and said, you know, 5 pews back, stay 5 pews back. It's not that hard to, you know, even rent a 70 to 200 f2.8. That's adequate light
for $100 maybe a day. Yeah.
Even if that, you know, and rent that lens, a 70 to 200. I honestly, and I could go down a rabbit hole with this of, you know, 35 millimeter photographers in a ceremony, like right up in the middle of things, you know, like that's just too much.
No. And I mean, like I even shoot on just the 35 for my weddings. That's like my main go-to lens that runs on my A cam. But I stay farther back and we shoot in 4K. So we're able to crop in just a little bit and there's no really quality loss.
And so, I've watched Carson like crop in on some of her photos, like 200%, and it's still as clear as ever.
Exactly.
You know,
so
it's 5 pews is what, like max 15, 20 feet?
It depends on what the distance is between the stage and that front of that pew, but still like it's,
I mean, 50 mil is perfectly fine for that too. So,
exactly. Photographer, videographer, like you can crop, you can zoom in a little bit for video. So it's, I mean, that's ridiculous, especially for that guy to run off the stage, grab him by the like collar. Like that is completely unacceptable. And I mean, at that point, that's another thing that is like we say in our contracts, again, we're going to kind of reiterate that voids our contracts right there. Like that is threatening like life or death or all that stuff. Exactly.
Doesn't even have to be like a member of your wedding party or something like.
No, if it's just a guest, exactly. No, it's and I mean, like we have all had our little experiences with like venue owners and stuff like that. Like I had one freak out on me for using a drone on there because she wanted to just upcharge for drone insurance, even though we're all insured already.
Yeah,
and all that stuff. So I mean, future when I actually have a wedding out at this venue next year, I'm just going to. I mean, like there's always loopholes for things, and I'm great at asking for forgiveness instead of permission. You just take off in an airspace that's not on their property. You just take off from like the road, which you can legally do, and then fly it over because they don't own the airspace above their property.
No, I was just gonna say that.
Yep, and there's nothing they can do. So,
heck yeah.
Okay, this is a long one. Okay, so I think this is gonna be our last one, but this is a very long one. But good, and also good because it happened in Montana.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna bleep out names in this.
Okay.
We actually truly regret hiring blank photography. Photos were important for our elopement. I chose her because she was nice on the phone and showed me a consistent gallery. The style we were given wasn't in line with the work she advertised to us, even though she claims they are. Leading up to our date, I got more and more frustrated with our decision and did not feel confident in her at all. We were never given our engagement session, even though we offered to drive as far as we needed to in order to do them. This was super important to me as I'm always doing them for others and so badly wanted some of my own because we hardly have any photos of us.
One thing I want to preface for everybody listening to this really quick. So this bride who is telling this story is also a photographer. she's out of Oregon, and this was elopement was happening in Glacier National Park. Just so you guys kind of have an idea. And I know she's willing to drive to Glacier and all that stuff to get her photo. So continue, Carson.
We even asked about doing something after the elopement instead, if that's easier, since that would save her a trip, but we got no response back. While we were there, we were given no direction on how to pose or what to do. Thankfully, our videographers directed the entire time. Our videographer even asked how many times, which I heard a few, if she wanted to step in and do something. To which she said, no, I'm good. Each time, excuse me, it's your job to direct, and videographers are supposed to be off to the side getting everything. Atta girl. Or you take turns. Because of this, we did not get lots of the shots we wanted. We left it in her hands because we wanted to enjoy the day. And I, for once, did not want to work on my wedding day. Amen to that. She was very hands-off. I had a dress with a long train, and she didn't ever fluff it to make it look nice. I had to keep asking it to be done, otherwise it was all bunched up. We even redid a few shots for our first look because I wanted to do something specific for our video, and her and her boyfriend were nowhere around. Found out they were at their car, so they could have gotten the redo shots of our first look. At the end, our request is to end in the morning and go get burgers and milkshakes in our wedding attire and to get photos of that. We planned this when we booked her, discussed prior many times, the day before and at the elopement location. In the car, she literally asked to dip out to go hiking in the spot we eloped. At this point, I'm super pissed off, so I would just say bye to her because I don't want to have her around since she clearly could care less about us. We did not feel like a priority and just felt she was there for herself. A week later, we got our 10 sneak peeks. I had to tell her to re-edit them because of how inconsistent and incorrect they were. My husband wore a very beautiful green suit to stand out, and he's a white man. We received ones where he looked brown and his suit was black. Not to mention, one of our sneak peeks was of her. Like, if I'm only getting 10 photos, why would I want one to be not of us? That's actually so funny. Once we got our whole gallery back, we were super disappointed. To be honest, we didn't even want to go through them when we received them because we were so upset. For some reason, the gallery that we were delivered was very inconsistent and not like the work she advertised to us. His suit would be black to emerald green to sage green, etc. My dress was nude, but in the photos, it would be bright white to nude to almost yellow. We had to tell her multiple times how to fix our photos. Many photos were super crooked. My husband's eyes were blinking, photos of me making super ugly faces because I'm falling. I'm sorry, but it felt rude. I want to feel pretty on my day and didn't because of seeing photos of stuff like that. All photos of me alone are of my back. There were several opportunities of me alone facing the videographers, so why were none taken at that time? You were right next to them, so how was this missed? Like my mom asked many times of a photo of just me, and I had to send her the ones of my back, and she literally cried. The saddest thing is we didn't invite anyone, so that's all we have. There were tons of photos of herself, including her butt, in our gallery. Her boyfriend, our videographers, her posing for social media content. It was super weird. Funny enough, her boyfriend with almost no experience took better shots than she did and advertises those ones. Interesting. She was advertising our photos online even though we hadn't received them. So my first time seeing her photos was through a Facebook comment. Really killed our vibe of being able to relive them together. After telling her how we felt, she didn't seem to care at all. Even after many times of expressing our feelings, she basically said, "What do you want me to do about it?" in a rude way. No apology. That hurt the most. She told us basically, well, all my past clients have never been upset. Okay. How about us? Again, you're not involving yourself. You're just distancing yourself completely from the problem rather than trying to resolve the issue. The entire time it felt like we were a write-off for a trip for her. And because of that attitude, we are left with photos we don't even want to look at anymore. Even one of our Facebook friends started commenting on my Instagram, which felt unnecessary. We absolutely wish we went with the other photographer we were about to go for. We simply do not feel that $4,500 she quoted us would be worth it. Our budget was $2,500, and even the $2,500 we paid was definitely not worth it. Because of all this and having her re-edit everything, we had to wait over 3.5 months for our photos. There was about 15 of them that we felt okay with what we posted. She told us that she would have the photos she re-edited by yesterday, but was late for that. Almost done. I had to email after past deadlines asking for an update on the photos. She then emails me my link, doesn't say a word to me or my email. After receiving our full new gallery, there happened to be finally a few of me, which was great. But why weren't those included the first time? To be honest, lots of the photos are now worse than the first time. They're still crooked, inconsistent. Basically, what I wanted changed was even worse. Like they were very, very orange or very blue in the getting ready, and now they're all super orange. I don't understand how nothing was changed. We have photos from the first set that are literally the exact same photos. Why did we have to wait even longer for what seems to not be edited again? We received way less photos than we did in the first time. We did not get some of our favorites we loved from the first. It's all just very frustrating. Therefore, we ended up again getting a job half done. It's actually ridiculous how much she's checked out and has never cared about us as clients. Her email back seemed as if she was mocking us for being upset about the amount of photos that were of her and her boyfriend. She continues to act like she's in the right in this situation when she's not. I have no idea how she's still in business. We asked for a partial refund for the fact that I now have to do the work after waiting 3.5 months for no more than 10 to 20 usable images. She said that she's not going to because it's my choice if I want to do the work. Like, really? I didn't pay this much to do the work myself. I could have brought a tripod and got better photos.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I know this story pretty personally, and I'm pretty biased, I guess, in a little bit of a sense, because her name is Julia, is the photographer's name, and she is
The bride's name.
The bride's name. She's also a photographer. That's kind of where my brain went. Yeah. The bride's name in this sense. And she is a great photographer herself. And she sent me the full gallery and we talked about this. And I agree that her editing style compared to what her website shows is completely different of this photographer that she hired. And I was very disappointed for them. There was a few things I would say she was nitpicking, like the straight things about like the horizon line and stuff. I mean, I get that can sometimes be a style, but it was, I mean, like I said, across the board, these photos were very terrible. Like, and I felt really, really bad for her. And I actually personally almost went and reshot her elopement for her up in Glacier. Wow. Because like I said, we did become pretty good friends after this whole story and we knew of each other beforehand. So I was very, very disappointed for her and I felt really, really bad. And I mean, for that photographer, it was very unprofessional all the way across the board, the way they did stuff. And luckily, they just did have their 1-year anniversary a few weeks ago and got their photos retaken by another photographer, and they're amazing. So I'm very, very excited for them in that sense, but it was just ridiculous. Like I couldn't, if it was me personally, I mean, it was just very unacceptable. It sounds like the way this photographer ran things for her was she really was awesome up front to be able to get money. And then once everything happened, she's like, well, I don't care. They're just photos, and which is kind of pretty unacceptable.
Yeah, no, it's insane. It's just like, obviously I know that sometimes we get busy and miss deadlines happens. Mm-hmm. I understand that. And I hope that other people understand that sometimes like we are people, we do miss deadlines, but it was just like, there was issues since before the wedding even started that, you know, and it shouldn't be like the bride and the groom's fault at all. And it's not. I just think that photographer just like possibly discounted her package. It sounded like she was, you know, at $4,500 and then did it for $2,500, but then just use the trip as like a, you know, I'm not really going to try here, but let's go make a vacation out of it. Mm-hmm. And like for her to put in the gallery, like it's not that hard to go through the images and like make sure that like, you know, I always take photos of Carson at weddings. You know, I always do that. Mm-hmm. Have we ever delivered that? No, because we both go through and make sure that there's like no stupid photos. Like,
and nothing. If we do deliver one with us in it, it's with the couple. Yeah. And it's like something fun that's like, oh, hey, this is us. And it's not like multiple. Cause like I said, I looked at this gallery. There is like a ridiculous amount of shots where you're like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. Basically. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like 1 or 2 photos if we're in it, like stuff like that.
I was going to say, we've delivered like, to a couple that Will is like very good friends with, went to high school with. Like we took a selfie with them and we delivered that in the gallery. And we like thought it was unprofessional at first, but it was like, no, it was a super fun like group selfie. Like that is a context where I think that would be okay.
Exactly. Yeah. It just, I mean, everything across the board. One, if you're going to work with your significant other, I know you and Carson work really, really well together and it's very professional, but I do know a lot of married couples who get into this wedding industry and they fight at weddings. They are arguing. Like even when I work with Kendall, because she's also a photographer.
Carson gets hangry though. Side note.
Hey, we all do. But I mean, no, when that happens, I mean, like me and Kendall, when we do work together, are on the same page of like, I'm not being an asshole to you during the day. I am like, I'm telling you things because things have to get done.
Yeah.
And during an elopement, I would not bring my significant other unless we were doing a photo video combo together.
Yeah.
In that sense.
No, and I completely, I completely agree with that because like Carson and I, like, especially when we first started, like she'd get hangry or something. And I'd be like, Carson, like, I know we're together. I know we're together. But like, and I'm under the same boat, you know, because sometimes like I'm doing something I shouldn't do.
Yeah.
You know, but we're there as professionals with like, very like, yes, we're together, but we're there as professionals, and we
Exactly.
need to be portrayed that way.
Yeah, people
So-
always like, they're always like, oh, you guys are together.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to make it obvious that we're
Yeah,
together.
Exactly,
you know?
because that's so unacceptable. Like I said, I've seen some photographers who've done some pretty inappropriate things during the day. Like even when me and Kendall go together, like I said, we don't act like we're in a relationship. It's like we're business partners in a sense.
Yeah.
We're not like kissing each other. We're not hugging each other. Like none of this like weird coupley stuff. Like, because the only couple that really matters is the bride and groom.
Yeah, 100%.
And
That's
I
where
mean,
the focus needs to be.
Yeah. And in Julia's story here, it's just so unacceptable, like across the board. And I'm so thankful that they hired a great videographer. And that's another reason why, because her video, I also watched it, beautiful, like an amazing video. And I don't know the name of these videographers, but they were amazing. Like everything across the board, their shots. I'm so thankful for her sake that they were able to pose them beautifully and stuff. I mean, because the job of a photographer is to pose. Like that's the biggest thing. And it sounds like she wasn't doing that. And like she was saying, it's just unacceptable that she was making it more of a trip for herself than that. Like we've done some cool things. Like I've shot a wedding in Cancun, which was amazing, super fun. That wedding day is so professional. We're not like, oh, we should go here. We should be coming to this resort, doing all this stuff. It's wedding day. We're in wedding day mode. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And yes, like after the wedding and stuff, if you decide, like we were there for a week and we only had to be there for that one day of the wedding, we got to spend the rest of the vacation there, but we're not like looking at that wedding day being like, oh, I wish I could be going and drinking and down these water slides or hiking and stuff.
No, it got you there. That's the important part.
Exactly. And I don't know. I feel so bad for her. And I'm so thankful that she did hire another photographer and was able to do this like about a month ago or a few weeks ago, whenever it was, redo her photos for their year anniversary because they are beautiful. And
Yeah,
I mean,
there's so many so many like rabbit holes we could go down with this on both sides in a sense,
Yeah.
and it's just one of those things where once again, make sure you're and it's weird because like in a sense she was vetted, like she does have this portfolio, she has all this stuff, like all that, and it just happened. And that's just a risky run in anything. You're building a house and you hire like one of the best builders and then they just like half-ass it.
Exactly.
It happens. And I don't know psychologically or whatever why that kind of thing can happen, but it does. And so you just, there's...
And some of the photos, are pretty. I mean, it's hard to take an ugly photo in Glacier, which
Exactly.
this girl did. I don't know how. Some of the photos, are beautiful, and there's just like clearly some inconsistencies, which
very.
I think that's why it's so important to really like look at galleries and look at more than one gallery, because Julia talks about, she actually has a screenshot on this Facebook post of like this really pretty gallery, kind of the same style, like an elopement, but it almost looks like a styled shoot to me.
Yeah.
Like planned at the prettiest time of the day. That's one thing with like photographers is like not every wedding is going to turn out like our beautiful portfolios because the light is going to be different. The couples are going to look different. Like everything changes, for each wedding.
Each location, each day. Yeah.
Right.
Time
They're
of
not
year.
going to look exactly the same. But I think that's why it's so important to like look at a full gallery and more than one, because you'll really know how like consistent these people are. Because, like there are some photographers out there I know that post these absolutely gorgeous photos. And then you see some of their full galleries and you're like, the getting ready shots, those are ugly. The dancing shots, those are
that's
ugly.
another great thing we were talking about in video. Like they have these great Instagram teasers that are just so killer. And you're like, oh my God, I want them as my videographer. Then you look at their full films and you're like, what is going on here? This sucks. Like,
right. It's like those few shots, like obviously they're beautiful. They'll make it in magazines and they'll make it on Instagram pages, but it's like, that's not gonna, that can only get you so far. People aren't hiring you for those 10 to 20 photos that are going to be beautiful. They're hiring you for
a whole gallery that's beautiful.
The couple hundred that they're going to be getting. So I just think that I feel really bad for this girl, especially as a photographer. That's got to just really like, I can't even imagine, hiring. That's why it's so important to like do really good research. And I think like, when Will and I get married, like I want to hire somebody. If it's not you, Landon, I want to hire somebody that like, I know their portfolio head to toe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like the back of my hand.
I know this is a cardinal sin to say, but I know I shot another wedding for another photographer and she said, you can do whatever you want, like editing your own photos, but could I just have the raws? And at first we said, it was like I said, this is another one me and Amber did together. I think I did video, she did photo. But at first Amber said no. And then we went back and looked at her editing style and realized, oh, these actually are beautiful photos. And she's like, this isn't my editing style. She wants her own editing style.
Yeah.
So we did give her like the raw photos, and she was super thankful. And that's not something we'll do every single time.
Right.
But if you are also a professional in this industry, maybe to have that talk with that photographer if you want to do them yourself and have them your own editing style, if that
Right.
kind of
And
makes
even
sense.
if you don't want that, like I get not wanting to like do work
Yeah, for your own wedding. Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like I completely get that.
Yeah.
But I just think like, you know, I wish the only thing I wish like this bride did was like hire somebody that she maybe knew a little bit better.
Agreed.
You know, because
And I mean, I don't remember completely. I should probably go back and look and see. I do believe maybe that first photographer might have been me in that sense. I was also starting out a little bit new, and I think that's kind of how we started our relationship in that sense.
cool.
And she did decide to go with her. Don't quote me on that. Not 100% sure, but if it was like, and that's fine. I don't care either way, whichever they're happiest with.
Right.
I'm just really sad for her sake that this wasn't what happened for her.
Right.
Like she didn't get everything that she hoped and envisioned
Yeah.
for. And especially for her to be like just a jerk after the fact is
Yeah.
even worse.
because when
The
we get married,
photographer.
like we've worked with so many photographers that are like, because we want to. I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but we want to get married in Iceland and elope. But we've had so many like awesome photographers
Yeah.
at every single wedding we're at. Like, hire me, I'll come do it. And you know, like we know their portfolios, their work is so good, and I'm just like, see, I could hire this person or this person.
Yeah.
I have a whole freaking list of like people that I would
course you
hire
do.
for this, and that I would like be really happy with their work. So that was like the thing that probably surprised me the most in this story. It was like, as a professional yourself,
yeah.
like, I don't know.
No, I agree. It's
Yeah.
like I said, it's just unacceptable. But
For sure.
awesome. I think that was a great episode of just Reddit
Yeah.
stories. I want to know what you guys think about like the Reddit stories. Should we do more of these episodes? Do you hate them? Do you love them? Let us know. But I think it was a great episode, and
No, I agree.
we'll see you guys next week.
Deuces.
Bye.